the April featured tipster spot here at Tipstars. I'm delighted to be joined today by Steve Clark from Winning Online. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, Chris. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. And yourself?
Yes, hanging in there. A few
Excellent.
more winners would help.
Wouldn't it always? Steve, can we start with you giving a brief introduction about yourself to our listeners and maybe give them a bit of a background to Winning Online?
Yeah, not a problem at all. Yeah, well, I've been in the betting industry since 1995. I left university on the Wednesday in the kind of June of 95, and I started at a business called the Winning Line on the Monday, so I didn't have much time off. No gap year for me. And at the time, the Winning Line was Britain's biggest racing tipster operation, so I got used to very quickly dealing with a lot of big names: Lester Piggott, Dave Neverson, Patrick Beach. We employed quite a number of high-profile tipsters, and I was at the Winning Line for a decade. I thought I'd be there a few weeks, and it was an odd business to sort of leave university and start with. But I had an interest in risk, and I did sort of some psychology courses at university. So that kind of risk reward and speculation and the gambling sphere always interested me. And yeah, I was there till 2005, and then I set up on my own. I had an office in Manchester, and I stayed in the information publishing, content provision line of work. I've not always exclusively done the betting side. Most of the time it has been subscription-based advisory services, but I have drifted into other areas that interest me. I wrote a publication not long ago about peer-to-peer lending, for instance. I've been involved with some stuff on the financials, and I've also been involved with Betfair trading software. But primarily it has been, as I say, subscription-based advisory services. Done a lot of ventures, been involved with a lot of different people. A bit like yourself, Chris, with Tipstars, you've seen a lot of people proofing bets and new services, go through the same process at my end. So yeah, come across probably hundreds of potential tipsters, and then subsequently narrowed that down significantly to guys I've got involved with. In terms of Winning Online, it's a very, very small business. You know, at the end of the day, it's my job. I'm a middleman, I suppose. I'm trying to match professional gamblers or experts with the betting public. And I spend a lot of time, a lot of diligence trying to reach out to people I know within the industry, do a lot of digging, go through quite a process of somebody, again, similar to yourself, you know, proofing bets, and you've got a record of where somebody stands. And then I reach out to the betting public. Obviously, I've got a database, an in-house database. Yeah, and that's what Winning Online is. So at the moment, there's only actually a couple of advisory services within Winning Online. One is Top Dogs, which we're obviously going to talk a bit more about today, and the other is the Winning Machine, which again I think we're going to come on to later on. Yeah, so that's Winning Online.
Okay, that's a great introduction. Obviously, we're talking to you today, and you're more than welcome, rather than the man providing the actual information for Top Dogs, because of the need for him to maintain some anonymity. Yes. So without giving away too much, can you give us any background as to how you met the dog scientist, which I believe is the name he goes by? Anything about his background, and when you realised the opportunity existed to launch Top Dogs?
Well, I'd never actually done anything on greyhounds. My background has been primarily horse racing back from the Winning Line days. So it did interest me to try and explore whether there was a potential to find somebody who could supply quality information over the long term. So back in the autumn of 17, I made some contacts through, you know, people I know within the industry, and also did a bit of digging myself. And I came across actually not only the dog scientist, but another chap who went by the name of the Inside Man. So I've actually found two experts. It's actually very rare. Normally, whenever I get involved with anything, I deal on a one-to-one basis. It just avoids any complications. But in this case, there were two individuals who both had very, very good backgrounds within the greyhound world. And they probably knew each other by name, but I never said who each one was. So they were both in the dark. In terms of the dog scientist himself, he's got a very, very strong bookmaking background. He was formerly head of Betfair's Greyhound division, Greyhound desk, whatever you want to call it, for a number of years. So yeah, that's his background primarily. He lives and breathes dogs. He is he's home based. and he's a full-time. He makes his living out of the greyhound. He's a backer, trader, layer. When did I realise there was an opportunity for top dogs? As I said earlier on to the first question, I go through quite a process of diligence at my end. So I want to see somebody. I want to find somebody first of all. I want to make sure they're the real deal. They've got the CV. They tick all the boxes, but then they have to go through a real-time proofing process with me that can take sometimes upwards of 6 months. In the case of the dog scientist and the other chap was called the Inside Man, it was about a 3-month process from me actually receiving the first bet from either of them to me realising that, yeah, there was a service here. And I think it was the kind of spring of 18 where Top Dogs was actually, I first started to recruit some members.
Okay, and without giving away the edge, can you outline for the listeners sort of how the Top Dog service operates?
It operates very simply like a lot of things that I've been involved with, whereby literally the dog scientist will contact me of a morning by email generally, and he will say whether there is a bet for him or not that day. And I simply then just you jump onto my sort of database there and send that out by email and text message. So I never get involved with the selection process. That's if I've done my job properly, the expert who is supplying the information will. There's no need for me to play around with that. I don't want to influence their selection process at all. What we're seeing with the dog scientist is we're getting his personal bets. And he will say to me on occasion how much money he's actually placing on a particular bet. Let's just say we're giving a maximum 5-point bet. He will say he's having it. And it's a significant 4-figure amount of money. So he's not playing at it, this guy. He's a serious player in them. He's probably I would probably say he's one of 3 people in the country who is one of the biggest backers of dogs. He can move the market on his own. So yeah, he's the real deal.
Okay, and obviously you already touched on the fact that when you first launched Top Dogs, there was a second expert, the Inside Man, and you parted company with him last year. I know it was an amicable separation in the best interest of the service.
Yes.
And being flexible and proactive is important to the long-term success of a service. So what does the future hold for Top Dogs, do you think?
I think it's pretty much steady as she goes. I mean, I have spoke to the dog scientist, and I do on a regular basis, about some developments that we might look at. We have introduced the odd anti-post position. They tend to be quite price sensitive, though. The market can move quite quickly. So another idea we've had is maybe a kind of bolt-on in terms of a VIP type service, or maybe even late information as well. There is certainly, obviously, this information coming through all day long, and the dog markets are working from 11 in the morning till 10:30 in the evening. So there's a lot happening on any one day. Just coming back to the earlier question, by the way, about how a service works, most of the bets, 95%, will be given out in the morning for races taking place in the evening. But yeah, so there is a potential as well in terms of an extra add-on is a late information. But in the immediate short term, I'm happy with how things have gone. I know this guy is a very, very safe pair of hands. We will have losing periods, as any advisory service will, but the long-term figures are strong. So I'm very, very happy with this guy, and he's happy working with me, and we get on really well. So.
And there's a lot to be said for if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Well, absolutely. I don't like to tinker too much, and I certainly don't like to tinker with the process that's going on from the experts end. If he's happy, and obviously, we're not running a charity here. This is a commercial business, so it has to work for him as well. And that's a point as well that actually I would make to sort of, I think some members that I come across, they think you're just doing this for free. And that's not the case. They'll question why a subscription is a certain price, for instance.
Yeah.
Some of the guys I get involved with, they earn significant amounts of money, whether they have full-time jobs or whether they're actually professionals. So I have to dangle a big enough carrot to be able to share their information with the wider public.
Yeah, and I suppose that leads me on to my next question, because I think I'm right in saying the decision to part with the Inside Man was partly because of the pressure he was feeling personally. And do you think punters really underestimate the stress that tipsters feel when they're providing a service?
I think they do underestimate it. I mean, what I would say about that is there's certain tipsters that I've come across who really, they don't really care as much about their subscribers. They're in the subscription accumulation business. the guys I get involved with, like myself, we need to sleep at night knowing we're doing the best job possible. So if you do care about your performance, then pressure does get to you. And in terms of the inside man, his pressure wasn't primarily, his pressure really was he felt he was underperforming relative to the dog scientist, and he was. The data doesn't lie, and obviously everything is meticulously recorded.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why he had conversations with me to say, listen, I think you are better off. I mean, he's an absolute gentleman. He said, you are better off just working exclusively with a dog scientist. And that's why he took a step back. I am still in touch with him. He's still on the Top Dog members distribution list, so he sees the information. Will I do something with him in the future? Possibly. He is very, very well connected. He's on RPG TV. He's one of the leading presenters on there. So yeah, perhaps something in the future. I'm a big believer in never burning your bridges. So guys I've worked with in the past, I would never fall out with anybody. It's the betting world's a small world, so.
People who are good don't become bad overnight.
Correct.
They go through peaks and troughs, and
correct.
Yeah, and I suppose one of our aims at Tipstars is to help punters understand that you really do need to take a long-term view when following any tipping service.
Yeah.
We all there's not a get-rich-quick scheme out there. It's about patience. It's about having an edge over the long term. And that means there will be losing runs. It could be a losing week. It could be losing months at times. And how do you cope with those dips in form, and what conversations do you have with the dog scientist at those times?
I mean, I'm quite dispassionate about it. I've been doing this long enough now to know that, it's not my job really to get too embroiled in the emotions, the ups and downs. I have to maintain some kind of, because I'm contacting members all the time, and I'm having to write emails or whatever it may be. So it's not for me to get too in the swings of, as I say, you get these purple patches, and you also get these drawdowns. In terms of the dog scientist, he's been doing it long enough now. Don't get me wrong, if certain dogs are beaten by a nostril on the line, he will email me or chat me and say, sometimes there's a few expletives used.
Yeah.
But he doesn't. He's been doing it long enough, and that's what he does for a living. That he's not going to get too embroiled in hand wringing. I think the key is, and when I went to the winning line, the guy who ran the winning line at the time, he explained to me. He said, he explained it like this. If you have that type of bet over 100 bets, you will make money long term. And that's the kind of attitude that you need to have. And somebody like the dog scientist, and again, he does this often on a morning, he'll say, the price has moved against us, there's no bet now. So he's obviously looking for value positions, and that's the only way you can win in the long term.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, if a dog is beaten on the line, but he's given it a value price and he's taken a value price, he knows that he's done the right thing. If it's a stupid bet, then he wouldn't do that, but he would be guilty then of giving a bet that he shouldn't have even given in the first place. Which I can't recall me ever having a conversation with him along those lines.
Okay, and what piece of advice would you give to someone joining Top Dogs to get the most from their membership?
I don't think it's a single piece of advice. I think it's probably three areas. One is to follow all the bets. Again, one thing in my experience, not only with Top Dogs but other services, is that you're given 8-1 winner, and somebody will come back to you and say, "Well, I missed that because I was doing this, and the other." So I think there's got to be a commitment on the members' side that when they get involved with something, they've got to follow it to the letter. The second piece of advice would be to have as many outlets to place bets as possible. Unlike the horse racing markets, the greyhounds are a little bit more sensitive to price movements. So in terms of having accounts with multiple bookmakers would be certainly a piece of advice I would give. And thirdly, we'll come back to the infamous long-term expression.
Yeah.
Focus on the long term. Whilst you can get involved with Top Dogs on a month-to-month basis, my own personal view is you need to try it for at least a quarter.
Yeah, I mean, I totally support all three of those, and I think the long-term view, it's we could spend hours talking just about that, because I think it is so central.
Yeah.
And I see so many emails and comments from punters who have joined services.
Yeah.
And within a few days they can be bemoaning the fact that they've joined, and how does this make a profit? And it's this instant gratification that they all seem to want that doesn't exist. It has got to be a long-term investment.
I think what happens is they're not prepared when they enter the fray. They're not. that they're emotionally not prepared. They don't have the adequate betting bank, and as soon as you hit a losing run, they can't handle it, and that's the difference that separates the amateur from the professional.
Yeah.
And what I would say about that is, just in terms of my experience over the last 23 years, back in my winning line days, we had a lot more, I'll say sensible members. They had an allocated bank. They would say, right, I've put X thousand to one side. And that doesn't seem to happen to the same extent now.
Yeah, I think punters do underestimate, having a betting bank and why it's important, and that I think goes hand in hand with them jumping ship as soon as there is a bad run. You're absolutely right. They're not set up for a long-term approach.
No, they're not.
And that's why they miss out on the successful tipsters that are out there. Anyway, we could go on for hours about that one. We won't. We'll go back to the fact that you mentioned right at the beginning that currently on Winning Online you have a second service called the Winning Machine.
Yeah.
So do you want to take the opportunity to give listeners a bit of a background to that system?
Yeah, the background to the Winning Machine was I've been intrigued for a number of years about this whole quantitative approach and using algorithms and effectively eliminating a human tipster. Because I've dealt with human tipsters for 20-something years, and you asked earlier about the inside man and pressure, and I've seen that happen. I've seen tipsters who are extremely good professional gamblers in their own right and make a living out of it. But when you've got the pressure of advising subscribers, they can, I'm not saying go on tilt, but they can be affected by it. So having a machine to effectively select positions has always intrigued me. So 2 and a bit years ago, I came across a guy who's a data scientist who has no background whatsoever in gambling or horse racing. He actually works for as a consultant for a major bank, contractor for a major bank. And he's got a horse racing algorithm, which effectively has become the Winning Machine as we know it today. So yeah, each day at 11 o'clock, I receive an automatic email with the positions that's spewed out from a machine learning algorithm, and they are then passed on to paying subscribers.
Great. So you've got the dogs and you've got the horses on board now. Any plans to look for any more tipsters to join the Winning Online, or is it a process that you're constantly doing and it's just as and when the right opportunity arises?
Yeah, I mean, there will be. I'll be looking to be a bit more aggressive in growing the portfolio over the next 12 months. There's a number of areas that I mean, US racing is one, for instance. I've had conversations with the data scientist about that. What I would actually like to do is probably continue on this theme of kind of the quant approach. So other sports and other areas whereby, there's not necessarily a human tipster involved. I'm not anti-human tipster. It's just it's something that intrigues me because you look at the whole way society's running, and Google and Apple and all this type of stuff, and they're all into AI and machine learning, and it's big, and it's big for a reason. There's a lot of power to it. So yeah, that's something that I'll be looking to develop.
Great. Well, keep an eye out for those. And finally, Steve, if you could change one thing in the tipping world, what would it be and why?
I mean, I've got a couple of notes in front of me here, and whilst I'm aware of other tipsters, I don't really concern myself too much about what's going on in the tipping world, to be honest. In terms of changing, it comes back to the point we've made about members' attitude, and that would be the biggest thing. Getting involved, unrealistic expectations, and not patient, too quickly throwing in the towel. That would be the biggest thing for me. It makes my life very difficult when you spend a lot of work, a lot of diligence, many months, you launch something for whatever reason, and it's through no fault of the tipster or myself that results don't start off well, and then you get people just heading for the exits. So that will be the biggest thing for me. Try and move away from the short term to the long term. I think I understand why members do it, because there's a cynicism level there that wasn't there when I first came into this industry. A lot of people, and this is more power to your elbow, Chris, in terms of running Tipstars. A lot of people have had their fingers burnt by tipsters, and I think they're very, very wary. So when they do hit a few bumps in the road early on, they want to bail out. So having platforms like Tipstars, the way I conduct myself, I don't, if somebody approached me and said, right, I know about, I don't know, tennis, and they said, right, I'll send you 2 weeks of bets, I wouldn't be launching a service at the back of 2 weeks.
No.
So, you know what I mean? But that does happen, and people have had their fingers burnt with that. So it's long term on both sides, isn't it? It's for somebody, it's somebody like me to be making sure that I'm doing everything I can. Because at the end of the day, I have a reputation, and you're putting your neck on the line every single day. Top Dogs is giving bets every day, so is the winning machine. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, it is an education thing. I think there is room for education, for want of a better word, in terms of punters' approach to using a service, and I think that will benefit both sides, because obviously it's you don't want members coming and going like a revolving door.
No.
You want that long-term relationship with your members, in the same way that they should be taking the long-term view with using the service.
I mean, I would rather deal with less members paying more subscription, to be frank. Because in my experience, I believe that you've got a lot more stickability. They buy into what you're trying to do, and they have a more long-term view. I think when members are involved with lots and lots of different services, and they're paying small amounts of money across a broad spectrum, they don't have the same loyalty, I suppose, or interest in one particular service.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for that. Good. Okay. Well, I think that's given us a really good insight into the winning online and Top Dogs in particular. Yeah, I think the listeners will have got a good insight. Is there anything you want to add before we go, Steve?
I don't think so, Chris. No, I think I've pretty much said. I think we've got an idea of how I work, and Top Dogs is, as you say, if it's not broke, don't fix it, and Top Dogs isn't broke, and we've had a good start. Fantastic January, actually, the best winning month we've ever had, and we've not had a losing month since November. So it's been going consistently well, and as I said, the dog scientist himself, although you don't know him by his actual name, I can assure your listeners, he is the real deal, and he's on the coalface every single day, and spends a lot of time up at whatever time he is up at 4 or 5 in the morning. A bit like yourself, Chris.
Yeah, I know that one. Thanks very much. Okay. Well, thanks for taking the time to talk to us today, Steve. It's been really good. I wish you success with Top Dogs and your other winning online services.
Yeah, thank you. Likewise with Tipstars.
Thank you. And remember, you can find out more about Top Dogs by visiting the featured tipster page at tipstars.tips. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to introducing you to more top tipsters in the coming months. Bye for now.